is ilm al-Kalam, and what are some of the reasons why people are going towards ilhad. Firstly, when people think about ilm al-Kalam, they think it's a set of a doctrine, aqidah. And this is not exactly true. Ilm al-Kalam is a system of thought, it's a paradigm, it's a process of separating good creed from bad creed. Just like ulum al-hadith, we study ulum al-hadith to be able to have a tamayyuz between as-sahih was-saqim, sanadan wa matnan. And so we look at what is authentically ascribed to the Prophet ﷺ, in terms of the chain and in terms of the text also, and what is inauthentic. Likewise, ilm al-Kalam, it does the same thing with creed. At the very beginning, the earliest of mutakallimun were not Sunni mutakallimun. They were Mu'tazila. They were a radical rationalist group, arguably brilliant in terms of their intelligence, but unfortunately misguided. And from them you had some people that noticed that, the likes of al-Imam al-Azim, Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, radiyallahu anhu warda, who noticed, realized, and he himself was being nurtured by his uncle Abu Ali al-Jubba'i to take the seat of al-i'tizal. So he fully understood this tradition, but also understood its flaws. And this is the beginning of that journey of Sunni Kalam. Of course, you have the Imam al-Huda, Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. You have the great Imams, the grand students of Imam al-Ash'ari himself, such as al-Baqilani, Abdul Qadir, etc. These are great A'immah. And this is the first wave of Sunni Kalam. I'm going to say Sunni Kalam because it includes al-Asha'ira wal-Maturidiyya. And in certain times within our history, a sort of mazj, synthesis between them, where there is a lot of overlapping. So I'm going to say Sunni Kalam. This is the first wave. We see a second wave where these arguments are fleshed out using a lot more philosophy. And this is a period where you see the great Imams such as Imam al-Juwayni, Imam al-Haramain, great Imams like Imam al-Ghazali, radiyallahu anhu warda, up to the likes of Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi. Now this is a heavyweight theological period. Strong theologians, great ulama with great writings, great books, great refutations of falsafa, a very important period within the Sunni Kalam tradition. Then you have a sort of third wave that begins with Imam al-Razi, opening the doors to a lot more philosophy, arguably manifested really perfectly in the likes of al-Imam Jalaluddin al-Dawani, radiyallahu anhu arda, and subsequently his students such as al-Mabzi or al-Maybudi. These are great Imams who then also incorporate things from the Shirazi school, a lot more hikmah, a lot more tasawwuf, falsafat at-tasawwuf. This is the philosophy of the Sufis, some of the Sufis that were inclined more towards ta'bir or explaining their experiences in philosophical language, a lot more incorporating of that within their works. The Ottomans are a little bit different. The Ottoman tradition sort of has this synthesis between Kalam and Sufism since its very inception by Dawood al-Kaysari radiyallahu anhu warda, and throughout its tradition, with very little contention within the Ottoman Empire. There was some, but very little. Then you have a sort of fourth period that I like to consider to be a fourth phase, and this manifests quintessentially within the 17th and 18th centuries of the Farangi Mahal tradition. This is the tradition that gives birth to the great curriculum of Dars al-Nizami. Many of the ulama in the UK and even today, this is the curriculum that they would have studied in their Darul-Ulooms, in their seminaries. Now, this is a period of open synthesis between four essential paradigms. You have the traditional Kalam, Asha'ira wal Maturidiyya. You have the synthesis with the falsafat, the tasawwuf, whether that is Akbarianism in the form of Shaykh al-Akbar ibn Arabi, or whether that is Ishraq, which is the school of As-Suhrawardi al-Maqtul, and traditional hikmah, traditional philosophy. philosophy, peripatetic philosophy, Aristotelian philosophy, all put together. Still with a heavy reliance on the traditional Kalam tradition, and the positions are largely those positions. But using different styles of discussion and of argumentation, a much wider metaphysics than what we saw before. So the Kalam tradition has its evolution, it goes through its journey. But at its heart, the focus has always been the truth. And this is what the Kalam tradition offers. The Kalam tradition is a paradigm of thinking. Thinking of creed, of belief, of doctrine, of morality, moral ontology, that conforms and corresponds to truth. When I say I'm a Muslim, I have al-i'tiqad, a belief, which is al-jazim, firm, with certainty, but also it is al-mutabiq lil-waqi' fi nafs al-amr. It conforms to reality as it is. Meaning that when I say, for example, that these are spectacles, I can bring you 100 different types of spectacles, and each time you will be able to say that's a spectacle. That's a spectacle. Why? Why can you do that? The universal concept that you have in your mind that allows you to identify each and every extramental particular within the world, why is it that you're able to do that? Because that concept is true. It conforms and corresponds to a truth. That truth, in terms of mainstream Ash'ariism, mainstream Sunni Kalam, it's because this thing in and of itself is a pair of spectacles. For some of the later mutakallimun that imbibed more falsafat at-tasawwuf, this conforms, this truth corresponds to the knowledge of God or to the realm of the a'yan. That's not relevant for us to discuss at this point here. But the fact is that truth corresponds to something. It's not a mere projection of my mind. It's not my imagination. Truth does not correspond to my mind. I'm not going to say that these are a pair of spectacles because that corresponds to my mind. No, it is in and of itself true. That is the central, most important function of Ilm al-Kalam. Correspondence. The theory of correspondence, of truth, as they call it. This is the central, most fundamental function of Ilm al-Kalam. Because everything that you believe has to correspond to truth. And this is what Ilm al-Kalam offers. This is what Ilm al-Kalam achieves. So I now, as a Muslim, have a paradigm of viewing the world. My moral ontology is true and corresponds to the knowledge of God, or to what God has ordained. We are also divine command theorists. We believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that tells you the moral value of any particular act, whether it's good or evil. God, it corresponds to the amr or nahi, the command or the forbidding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is what the paradigm offers.